Good afternoon, all. Welcome to the Changing Her Story All Girls Forward webinar. We are so glad you have joined us today. We'll give everyone a minute to join us. Welcome once again. Thank you for joining our Changing Her Story All Girls Forward webinar today. Soon you'll hear from a few of our current grantee partners. But first, I wanted to share more information on AWF and one of our newest grant initiatives, All Girls Forward Empowerment Program. AWF's mission is to be a catalyst for change in the lives of women and girls. We raise funds from the community and reinvest those funds into local programs, helping women and girls in poverty. Since our founding 25 years ago, we have invested over $27 million into programs of uplifting women and girls in our community. During the pandemic, we heard from our partners in the community that girls were really struggling. Here is just one quote from one of our grantee partners. We had to make significant investment in social, emotional learning and mental health. We were working with girls whose needs weren't being met before the pandemic, including issues with self-esteem, body image, etc. Once the pandemic hit, girls who were struggling were forced into a world of isolation. They were forced to engage more with technology and social media especially. We identified a lot more cyberbullying, and our girls were living in a world where they were also now caregivers and experiencing a lot of anxiety. Tiffany Coley-Bailey, CEO of Girls Incorporated. Knowing that the effect of the pandemic would be long-lasting, we commissioned research to learn more about the state of girls in Metro Atlanta. We found that girls were struggling and needed more support in education and their mental and overall well-being. Based on this research, we launched the All Girls Forward Girls Empowerment Program, which is a 5-year, $2.5 million grant initiative. Last summer, we granted $500,000 to 10 girl-serving organizations to empower their work in serving girls. You can find this research and more information on the All Girls Forward on our website at atlantawomen.org. Before we hear from a few of these organizations, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Allie Cobb, who's AWF's Senior Vice President of Development and Communications.
Thank you, Deshonda, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us today for this important discussion. I would first like to take a moment to thank our webinar sponsors for your support today. A special thank you to Liger and to Novellus, Stitch Fix, and the Honey Pot Company. Your support empowers our work, and we are grateful. And since it is Women's History Month, I do want to recognize, and as Deshonda alluded to before, we are in the midst of celebrating 25 years of AWF. That's 25 years of changing the lives of women and girls in our community. With your support, we plan to continue our work to be a catalyst for change for women and girls for the next 25 years and beyond. If you would like to support our work in honor of our 25th, you will soon find the donation link that you see on the screen and contact information in the comments. This work is only made possible by friends like you who invest in our mission, so thank you. We are excited to have our grantee partners share more about their programs designed to help girls in our community. So without further ado, I would like to first introduce our moderator, Julie Finn. Julie is a seasoned executive coach who leads the Working Mothers Mentor Collective, a dynamic membership community for ambitious women with professional and personal development training tools, engaging interviews with successful executives, a supportive community, and more. Julie honed her expertise in strategy, innovation, and thought leadership roles at top-tier global companies, including the Boston Consulting Group, the Coca-Cola Company, and Deloitte. She received her BA and MBA from Stanford University and her master's from the University of Oxford, where she was a Fulbright scholar. Julie was also a member of the inaugural Inspire Atlanta class of 2018. Inspire Atlanta is our community impact leadership program, and more information on Inspire Atlanta is available on our website as well. So with that, Julie, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Ali, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, or if you're watching the replay, thank you for taking the time to do that as well. We've got some really exciting and interesting organizations that we're going to talk about today. And with us, we have their leadership teams. And so we're going to start by having each leader introduce herself and tell us just a little bit more about the organization that she heads. And so we're going to start this with Elizabeth.
Hi, Julie. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's such a pleasure to join you all for this conversation. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Elizabeth Alongo. I am the CEO and head of school for Global Village Project, which is a school for refugee girls based in Decatur, Georgia. We are in our 15th year. We were started out by a grant from the Atlanta Women's Foundation. And so we're celebrating our 15th as you celebrate your 25th together of this initiative to just empower girls and move girls forward in our state. So thank you for that support.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and congratulations on 15 years. Maritza, we'd like to hear from you next, please. Oh, you're still muted. If Maritza and Rachel, you guys could just stay unmuted really for the rest of the time. Might be safer.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here as a part of the panel. My name is Marixa Morelli. I'm the executive director and co-founder of Los Niños Primero organization. I'm original from Venezuela, and I came to Atlanta 32 years ago. And since then, I've been directing the organization for 24 years.
Wow.
And our mission is to empower Latino students and their families from early childhood all the way to college, and through holistic academic and leadership and community programs. We are based, and our headquarters is in Sandy Springs, but we serve 5 different counties in 7 different locations.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Maritza. And then
Thank
Rachel, last but not least.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Hello, I'm Rachel Alterman Wallach. At Vox, we say our pronouns and our age and our schools. I'll spare you all of that, but so grateful to be here and bringing the voices of young people and young girls, young women who we serve through our after-school program and the media that Vox ATL makes. We unite teenagers from across the Metro Atlanta region, and most of those young people are young women and young people of color. It's important to note because Vox, which means voice in Latin, provides a space for young people to project strong voices so they grow themselves and also can inform and inspire a community.
Well, fantastic work. Well, thank you, ladies, for each taking the time to introduce yourselves. What I'd love to do now, because it's so interesting that you serve very different populations in different ways, but I'm sure as we go through this, we'll find that there are a lot of things that you have in common. But to start, I want to dive a little bit deeper into some of the most pressing issues and challenges that your girls and young women are facing. So I'm going to take it back to you, Rachel, and have you start, but I will ask each of you, so be ready to kind of dive in and just sort of unpack a little bit more about what's going on. Like, what are they telling you are the challenges? What are you observing? Because sometimes they can tell you and sometimes they can't. But we'd love to just start to lay the groundwork by painting this picture of what's really going on and what are they struggling with.
Sure. Well, the broader picture of what young people are saying is important to them and what they're interested in and where they struggle comes from our 2023 statewide teen survey. So 10 years ago, Vox launched a strengths-based, youth-driven survey to help complement or fill an information gap, to hear from youth, to answer those very questions, Julie. What is concerning them today and where do they feel valued? So the top responses from about 500 youth, most of whom identify as girls and most of whom live in Metro Atlanta, their top interests in 2023 were planning for life after high school, social justice, and social media and the arts. Their top stressors, or what's concerning them today, number 1 for the past 5 years is mental health.
Mhm.
So while safety and sexual and reproductive health were not significant answers on this particular survey, the young people that we serve in our after-school program So what we observe in person and what we observe in the media that they're making show us that these topics are paramount, from feeling like they're in a safe space on a day-to-day basis to feeling like they don't have to change themselves or shrink to conform to a societal or patriarchal standard. And then the very practical issues. They're growing up in an environment where gun safety and other aspects of their physical safety are um, vital. And then reproductive health and their mental health are their primary top concerns.
So that's a lot. So let's start with that. So I want to unpack this a little bit further because that's pretty much like everything. So how in the world, when you think about sort of prioritizing and when you think about sort of pulling the thread that's going to help to unravel this sort of like big knot of challenges, how do you think about that? Because I reviewed the survey as well, and it just feels like it's everything that you could imagine that someone between the ages of 13 and 27 would be dealing with. So how in the world do you think about that and prioritizing? So if I said like, what are the two biggest challenges, or if I had to sort of like try to wrap my head around what kind of keeps you up at night, how would you answer that?
I think that the through line that I see in all of those responses are two main things: health, including mental health, and an overall sense of well-being. And then planning for post-secondary success. You know, the pressures of school today are so real and so connected to their mental health and so impacted by the complexities of intergenerational trauma and underpinnings of racism and patriarchy. It can feel like so much. But if we focus in and hone in on those two vital pathways, a sense of well-being and mental health supports, which includes some wraparound supports, and pathways for hope and success, whatever success means for life after high school. Those post-secondary pressures are so real for youth today, and they become so intertwined with their sense of self and their well-being that showing young people that they have those supports and they have all kinds of possibilities for different pathways to defining success, for them defining success for themselves for life after high school, I think is what makes all the difference.
So that's really helpful. So thank you for boiling that down to sort of those two pathways. And so I think we have a particular opportunity with you since you've been at Vox from the beginning. And I'm just curious, as you look over the past, you said 25 years of Vox?
Vox has actually celebrated 30 years of youth
Wow.
voice in our community.
Wow,
in
congratulations.
2023.
Congratulations.
So if you look over the past 30 years, and obviously we've got some particular recent challenges like COVID, but if you think over the past 30 years, mental health and well-being and sort of post-secondary success, are those sort of new, or are they more amplified now, or is it this sort of like this is what this population has always been struggling with, or have you seen sort of some interesting changes? I'm just curious if the sort of foundational challenges are actually different, if it's a more modern set of challenges.
I think your word amplified is a really powerful one. You know, there's a universality of experience during childhood and adolescence that all of the young women that the three organizations here today are supporting: a sense of identity and self, a sense of safety and well-being, um, connecting with peers and the influence of peers in our culture. Those are universal experiences, regardless of which decade we're in. Of course, in 2024, some of those challenges and also beautiful opportunities are amplified in new ways. I think that's a really great word. So talking about culture and race and racism and misogyny are not new topics, certainly, but there's more voice and more opportunity, I think, for us to have conversations with youth. Young people in our survey, by and large, 72% said that they talk with their peers about mental health. That's huge. Understanding, though, that stigma is still very real and access to care is so limited in many communities and many spaces is also real. So to answer your question, Julie, I don't know that these concepts are new, but the conversations that we can have and the discussion of realities of the environment that they're living in are amplified in new ways. And incumbent upon us to be able to have those conversations and talk with them about the mentorship and the resources that my colleagues on this panel are providing today to meet the updated and more amplified needs today.
That's great, Rachel. Thank you so much for kind of taking us beneath the hood a little bit and helping us understand, because I think sometimes you'll see sort of broad headlines about what's going on, but it's really helpful, particularly the perspective of someone that's been working with this population for so long. So thank you for taking the time to unpack that. So Elizabeth, I'm going to ask you sort of a similar set of questions because you work with a really different population, but I would imagine a lot of the themes that Rachel just started to outline for us flow through to your population. So if you could just start by telling us a little bit more about Global Village Project and what are some of the biggest challenges and obstacles your girls face, both from their own perspectives, but also from the perspective of you and other leaders in your organization.
Sure, thank you. So a lot of what Rachel was saying resonates with me and the work that we do at Global Village Project. So in terms of just a little bit of a background, our students are refugees. They're coming into the US or have arrived in the US in the last 3 years at the most. Our students come from all over the world, any area of the world that you can think of where there's conflict happening, where people are being displaced, our students are coming from, and they're being admitted into the country, into the state. Alternative to us, there isn't another really viable option for them besides the public school system, where they would be alternatively, put in the school, no English, no school experience, sort of relegated to the back of the classroom and expected to succeed. So we exist as an alternative to that. And what we do, we are a 3-year program, sort of accelerated program that provides for these girls the fundamentals of being in school. Most of our students have not been in school before. Some have had some education, but not in English, so they don't have that foundation of language. And these are teenage girls, they're aged between 11 and 17, and they're learning to navigate the school system, navigate a new language, navigate a new culture all at once. So the challenges that we see them experience are very similar. They exist within the ecosystem of what Rachel was talking about. All of those things are concerning to them. But the most immediate concerns are just trying to figure out how to do school. So we have, 13, 14, 15-year-old girls who are sitting in the classroom for the first time. That's quite an experience. They're learning all the things that we learn in kindergarten, how to sit at your own desk and how to manage your own papers or your own schoolwork, how to raise your hand to talk in class or ask for a pass to go to the bathroom, line up to go to, lunch, things like that, that we all just take for granted. That's really big for students to be, anybody to be learning at once. While they're learning that, they're also learning the English language. They're also learning curriculum that they need to know because when they leave us, they're going on to high school. So they're essentially taking everything that is our academic and educational experience between K through 12, and a lot of what is also our social experience and our learned experience for those of us who, are familiar with the culture that we grew up in, and they're having to sort of cram that all at once. So it's very intensive for our students. And for us, the most immediate need that we need to address when they come to us is establishing a sense of safety. If you haven't been to school before, school can be a really jarring place when you're suddenly thrown into it. If you've been in war before and a bell signifies something else to you, it maybe a raid is coming, learning that the school bell just indicates a change of time can be a really difficult thing to learn. So there's a lot of trauma in their background. Talk about mental health, right? And we have to learn as a school, all of our policies have to really adapt to what the needs of our students are. Just this morning, we were talking about, this mental health, it was a mental health debate about school attendance versus absence. So if a student says, I couldn't come to school, I didn't come to school because I just didn't feel like it, is that something that we, register and address as a problem, or is that something that we reward a student for advocating for themselves and saying, if you really can't do it, you just can't do it, today. So those are the kinds of things that we are trying to navigate with our students and trying to learn. And for us, every single day is a learning experience with these girls.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's really helpful because I think as we sit here, we try to wrap our heads around what it means to take girls from all over the world with trauma backgrounds who many of whom have never been in school, so presumably maybe illiterate, just all kinds of things, but even down to the basics of sitting in the classroom or understanding what the bell means. So as you sort of go a little bit deeper into the challenges, sort of like on a day-to-day basis, help us understand, because I think for me, it almost sounds like it would be overwhelming. Like, I don't even know where you would start. The challenges seem so many, but so diverse in some ways, because like you said during your introduction, you have girls from all over the world, even though high school age, but still quite a, I mean, 11 to 17 is still there's a big difference between an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old. And then with very different backgrounds. So as we start to wrap our heads around at a more granular level, and you've already done a great job of giving us specific examples, but as we start to wrap our heads around the obstacles and challenges, what are some of the things that you're bumping into or that your girls bump into? So I understand some of the difficulties, but if I think about things that are actually obstacles, like they're trying to move forward, they've arrived in this country and then this happens, or they try to enroll in something and then this happens. I'm trying to get a sense for, because I could imagine as a refugee, there are quite a few unique challenges that as Americans that we don't even necessarily understand, or even as immigrants, but who weren't refugees, that we don't even understand just the challenges of, getting an ID or whatever. So it would be helpful to help the listeners understand what are the kind of the unique set of challenges in addition to mental health and the basics of education. What's unique for a recent refugee?
One of the biggest challenges our students face is when they're leaving us, right? They sort of come to us and exist for 3 years within this very sheltered community. We really are a village. We have a vast cohort of volunteers who come into the school every day. Students really get one-on-one support. Our teachers are specialized ESL teachers. Our staff are all trained in, cultural humility and restorative justice and all of this. So it's a very, very specific environment, a very, very safe one. Making that transition to high school for our students is really, really hard. They don't have necessarily strong language skills. If you've been a refugee and you were forcibly displaced from your home country, you don't come into this country necessarily with all of your documents intact, right? So a lot of summers with our third-year students who are trying to go into high school, we're calling schools in Afghanistan, trying to get, transcripts, and then trying to interpret it, translate those transcripts, and make sure that they respond to what the school that the student is going to needs. And a lot of these students, they're making these trying to overcome these challenges on their own, not knowing exactly what the system demands of them, not having parents who sometimes their parents are illiterate even in their own home languages. These students have to be anchors, not just for themselves, but for their families. They're often the ones filling out job applications for their parents. They're often the ones they'll miss school because their mother is going to the doctor's office and she needs someone to speak on her behalf. So those are real things that these students are facing. They don't have the luxury of a childhood in the way that many children do. They're having to navigate this big, scary world on all their own. So again, back to our program, on what we learn is really every year we're learning new ways of serving them. And what we are trying to do more intentionally, there's a really large and robust ecosystem of nonprofits and organizations that serve the refugee community. So really integrating ourselves within that coalition, creating partnerships that can provide services that the students need that are beyond our charter and our capacity. All of that is very important so that they really have a support system, because it's a big, scary thing for a child. And we can't afford for these children to be left on their own.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's really helpful. And I feel like we have a really vivid picture of some of the challenges that your girls are facing. And so, Maritza, I'm going to ask you, because again, it's a very different population in some ways, again, with some overlap, but I would love to just unpack a little bit more about the specific challenges and obstacles that your population is facing. So maybe if you can just tell us a little bit more about who you serve, a little bit more specifically, and what some of their unique challenges and obstacles are.
Yeah. Well, I feel so connected with what Elizabeth was saying, because we serve the Latino community, and the Latino community faces different challenges, no? Because we serve children from age 3 all the way to college. We have a big spectrum, and we also serve the families. So when you see the challenges that they face, we need to make differentiation between all of them because it's a really broad spectrum. So for parents, one of the major challenges is immigration policy, because many of our parents don't have the proper documentation to work here in the United States. The majority of them come from Mexico, and the majority of them come with a educational level at around third grade. So they have a big challenge also in terms of helping the kids in the school. And for them also, the big challenge is the language barrier. Elizabeth was mentioning it too. She has a big spectrum of languages. We have a Spanish language here, but really it's a really challenging for parents to navigate the school system, navigate many of the services that need to navigate, like have access to healthcare, the economic equality, because they don't know what kind of job they can do. And some of them, they are not qualified for different job, plus they don't have the proper documentation. So those are more or less what the population, the families are facing. So in terms of the youth population, we conducted a focus group last year with each one of our stakeholder, the student, the youth, the parents, and the teachers. And one of the things that the students, the youth were saying is that they were very interested in the environmental, the healthcare, because they feel like they are going to embrace the world that they are going to be embrace is a world with many problems, with the problems in terms of the global warming, and how they are going to be living in a world with so many challenges. Now, the healthcare, because our girls, they don't have that much information about reproductive information and what their abilities of deciding about if they want to be more proactive in terms of their sexual life, and how they can face those challenges. No, and they also are very interested in mental health. Our girls and our families in general, and this is across the board, across the families, the mothers, and also the young lady, they don't feel like their voice has been heard, and sometimes they have to even change their feminine to be girly, because they feel like they cannot be heard with the same level that men has been heard. And I have the case of one of the very smart young lady that worked with us, and they has been as a volunteer, that she was graduating as an engineer. And she says to me that one of the things that was really hard for her is to embrace her feminist side, because if she did, she was not taken seriously. And now in the workplace that she see a mentor and a leader that has been embracing her feminist side. So she is giving herself a permission to do that as well. So, and this is one of the young ladies that are very open to talk about that. But we have many of them that they feel like they have to change themselves in order to be heard. So the cultural part of our girls that they need to face, because many of our students now were born here in the United States, but their families are from other culture. So to make the marriage between those two cultures, they have to really face greatest challenges, because they don't feel like they are totally Latino and they don't feel like they are totally American. So the fact that they have to face their own identity, it's tough, like a two level. One, regular developmental identity crisis that we have as any teenager, but at the same time now they add the bicultural element, which is really complex, because when Elizabeth was mentioning too that our children has a shorter childhood because they have to be more in the adult side, making decisions, interpreted for different situations, healthcare, or going to the school, and they have to sometimes even translate or interpreter for them. So these are big challenges that our community and our girls are facing. And the other thing is the ability to express themselves clearly. When you have a culture that put a lot of emphasis in language and you don't dominate the language, you has been perceived like you are not smart enough. And that it's have a big impact in the self-confidence. And when we started Los Niños Primero, one of the things that make us really, we did it very intentional. We wanted for our community to have a safe place where they feel that they belong. And this is a fundamental human feeling. When you emigrate, you feel like you don't have a place anymore, because you don't have anyone that can talk about you. You don't have familiar faces, you don't have familiar places, and in top of that, you don't dominate the language. So you feel in part very lost. So Los Niños, one of the things that we do a lot of emphasis, put a lot of emphasis on that, on the fact that they have a place here, well, they have a voice, and we heard the voices. Every year we had surveys or focus group, and we implement what they really want to see in this organization, because this organization is their organization.
Well, thank you, Maritza. That's really so instructive and so helpful. And what I find really fascinating listening to each of you is that there are so many cross-cutting issues around things like identity and cultural norms, broader social issues. And one of the things that I heard that kind of echoed through each of your explanations about what are some of the challenges, and this is this idea of mental health. So before we turn the page and start to talk a little bit more about your programming and how you address these challenges, I'd love to just get underneath this question of mental health a little bit more, and to, since you guys are so close to your populations, to understand, what do you think are some of the drivers? Is it social media? Is it just the age that we're in? Is it specific to their unique experiences? So whether that be as a refugee or an immigrant or a child of immigrants, or is it just being a teenager in 2024? So I throw that up for any of you. You don't each have to talk about it, but if anyone has sort of thoughts around, I'm trying to get underneath the drivers of this idea. So part of it, I could imagine, is people now have the language to speak about mental health. And so that's probably part of it. But I would like to understand what's sort of driving this, not just the awareness, but the challenges dealing with mental health.
I think all of the above. I think social media is a big part of that. And also, school is not really embracing the issue of our youth right now. They are just blind of what is happening in the school, and also, it's like teaching more the meaning of being a human, a happy human, someone that can enjoy life at the same time that is learning, because right now they put a lot of emphasis just in standardize things that they don't mean anything to our youth. And, you know, it's the family too. The families are working extra hours that they don't connect. They don't have time to connect. So are some of the factors that we see. We see every day our society is really demanding in work, and really they don't put a lot of emphasis in leisure and having time off to just contemplate and have fun and connect to each other.
That's really helpful. Rachel, I saw you wanting to jump in as well. Do you have some thoughts around sort of what's driving this sort of, I don't want to call it an explosion, but maybe it's just a recognition, but what's driving this, what some might even call a crisis in mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I think our public health officials have called it a crisis. Yeah, I agree completely with Maritza, and what I was doing was pulling up an article that the teenagers here at Vox are creating right now. We participated in what we like to call a speak out station at the 100 Black Women of Metro Atlanta's youth mental health event last week. And young people there, if your pen turned into a microphone and you could tell people all across Metro Atlanta what's important to you about mental health right now, what would you say? So I was looking real quick to see what did they say so I could pass it along to you all before the story's published. And by and large, they're talking about their need for the adults in their lives to validate their experiences. So I'm going to read you something that Brooke, a 14-year-old young woman, wrote, which was, parents, and I'm going to call this caregivers and other adults who care about youth, shouldn't invalidate their child's feelings when it comes to mental health. And speaking about being depressed or having ADHD or anxiety and disorders of the such. It's important to me because so many kids don't get the proper teaching and learning they need to help cope with what they have. And so many kids are killing themselves or having their conditions worsen because of parents invalidating their feelings because they don't know what it's like, or it's just because of social media. And honestly, it's devastating. So that comes from a young woman in our community who I think is really amplifying what we hear from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Again, remember that this statewide survey where we heard from 500 youth, by and large, young people are talking about mental health with each other. So this stigma that we've been facing in a macro environment is it's smaller peer-to-peer. Young people are speaking up about mental health. They're just not feeling validated by the adults in their lives. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity for us to believe them when they say, I'm suffering.
Thank you, Rachel. That's a really important insight. And I think it really speaks to the fact that not only are the young people more empowered and more articulate about it, but they recognize where there are gaps and where that disconnect is driving sort of this almost, to use the word amplify again, it's amplifying the feelings of being isolated and anxious and depressed if you feel like your caregiver doesn't even believe you. So thank you for that. And then Elizabeth, before we turn the page, is there anything else you'd like to add to the conversation about mental health when we think about what some of the underlying drivers may be?
Just that, you know, for me, if I were to sum it up with one word, it would be the word expectations. And to be more specific, mismanaged expectations. Young people are dealing with so many expectations of them, from their own schoolwork, you know, the expectation of going to college, and then how are you going to fund college? There's family pressures, particularly in the demographic that we've talked about. And then they have to think about big things like global warming, you know, guns at school, and so little control they have over what social media is telling them they should be or do, and all of that. And then when you do layer on what Rachel was talking about for the populations that we work with specifically, where there's a cultural element to mental health, and whether or not, you know, mental health as defined is being validated, it's a lot for these young people. And I think that it's those mismanaged expectations that are having us see the trends that we're seeing.
Well, thank you guys. I think you've done a beautiful job of helping to lay the groundwork to help us understand just sort of the myriad challenges and obstacles that your girls are facing, and also to see where there's so much overlap despite the differences in your populations. I'd like to turn the page now and talk a little bit more about solutions so that we end on a high note talking about all the amazing work that you're doing. And as we know from the introduction at the beginning, is AWF recently launched a new initiative, All Girls Forward, the Girls Empowerment Program, of which each of you is a grantee partner, which I think is just fabulous. So I'm going to start with you, Elizabeth, because I know that your relationship with AWF goes back a long way. So this is not your first rodeo with them. But I'd love to understand, when you think about this concept of empowerment, first, why is this important? So we've laid out all these very sort of like concrete challenges. We want to start to then understand, how does empowering your girls make a difference in their lives? And then I want to tie it into the AWF partnership. How is this particular new grant helping you to push forward the programs and services that help to empower the girls? So first, why empowerment? Why does that matter? And then two, how your participation in this new AWF program is helping you to implement programs and strategies to push your work forward.
Sure. So for us, empowerment matters because it comes down to advocacy, and it comes down to specifically the ability for our girls to advocate on their own behalf. And in order to do that, they have to feel like they have a voice, right? Rachel's work and Maritza's work, I think, talk about that, that they have to feel like they have choices, and they have to have access to opportunities as well. I think those are key ingredients, those voices, choices, and opportunities. And voices, when I talk about voices, I talk about both, I mean both the sort of self agency, but also literally, the language to say things, to be able to express yourself and to be able to express your needs. So that's why we focus, for us, our program starts with, English language education, because that is the foundation, that is the language with which they need to be able to navigate the society. So that's a first building block for voices. And then in our program specifically, we go on to do our social emotional learning pillar. We have 4. So it's English language, it's social emotional learning, it's a STEAM program, and then a mentoring program. And within the context of the social emotional learning, they are developing and learning the language to be able to navigate their own trauma and unpack their trauma and heal from it. So that's very, very important. One of the things that's great about our school is that these girls all have a shared experience of being refugees. They know what it's like to have been plucked out of your home and thrown into another, or to have lived in a refugee camp or whatever it is. So it makes it easier for them to be able to have those dialogues. They don't have to define things. They know there's a commonality in that. So those are some of the things that we do. And then the mentoring aspect is also an important part of empowerment for us, because every student who's leaving us in their 3rd year gets a mentor, a person in our community who volunteers to be an anchor for them as they go on to navigate high school and also beyond. We see our mentor, even though we only ask a year-long commitment of our mentors, we see them extend well beyond a year. Our mentors are often the ones taking their mentees on college visits and talking to them about tuition and federal, financial aid, and in-state versus out-of-state tuition, and just understanding all of these complex things that, I think even US citizens who are born within the system and grow up within it are still very, very difficult to navigate. So that's how we see empowerment, and that's why we see empowerment as being critical, is that it presents these girls with voices, choices, and opportunities to be able to move on with their lives. And then specifically to your question about the AWF grant, for us, from the very beginning, that grant has been instrumental. It's the thing that seeded us. It's the thing that got us to where we are today. And even, the most recent grant that really helps us create an ecosystem of support around our students. So it's right now funding for sort of ancillary services. So not direct instruction, but transportation, our school lunch program, mental health support for our students, and all the resources around that. And it's just critical, because I think we all know that, having students learn curriculum is one thing, but in order for them to be able to, in our school, we say that we hold their mental health in the same regard as their academic achievement. And we find that mental health and that well-being and that feeling of safety and that capacity to self-advocate advocate is foundational to any academic success that they can expect to have. So that's what the grant enables us to do, and that's what we're trying to do within the context of our program, is just empower girls to be able to ask for what they want and then get access to it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And then Rachel, I'm going to toss the same question to you. So one, why does empowerment matter? And two, how is your partnership with AWF, particularly in this, because again, I know your connection with AWF goes back to the beginning, but how particularly this recent program and your partnership with AWF through this program is helping to facilitate and push forward your mission?
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, first of all, I love Elizabeth's comment, this foundational concept of voice, choice, and access to opportunity. That could be the tagline of this collective approach to grant making and support and power with young people today. I think to amplify that and to share Vox's perspective, Vox, we believe that power comes with being heard and also, as I alluded to before, believed. So there's an amplification of voices, but then there's also equality for. We say we believe you. As Elizabeth noted at Global Village Project, or Maritza did, hearing from the community what they say they need and then implementing it shows girls that we heard you and we believe you. And then the reciprocity, the accountability there says, not only do we believe you, but we benefit from your voice. And that is a feeling of power. So the investment that Atlanta Women's Foundation has made in Vox through the years and today is an act of believing and then helping us act on what young people say that they need to thrive. I solicited the input of our amazing executive director, Sharon Cash, in being able to answer this question here today too. So what does this investment do for Vox today and not just through the years? So please know that investment, first of all, is sizable and that it is an investment in a cohort for multiple years is so huge as we try to implement programming on an annual basis. So foundational support is just vital and not incremental support. So that's first and foremost. And from a very practical standpoint, being able to develop programming with youth where they know that their voices matter and they are believed and they can use those voices to help inform a community is what this grant helps us do. So for example, this past fall, we launched a journalism fellowship, developing young journalists who learn media literacy skills vital in today's environment, and then use those skills to create credible media and original content so that young people are creators of that media that's so influential to them and not just passive recipients or receptacles for it. We were also able to launch a youth voice leadership accelerator where teens came together to learn to amplify their voices from an advocacy standpoint, using media to bolster the causes that they find important. And last semester, they chose specifically to speak up about critical race theory and its impact on their education today. And then last but not least, the support has also helped us strengthen our internship program and our work-based learning program. This semester, we've got 8 young women from across Metro Atlanta with very different identities and life experiences coming together to help learn to lead our programming. So really utilizing the power and the positive power of peer influence to provide relevant, accessible programming for their peers with the wraparound supports that they need in a high quality youth development environment.
That's excellent. Thank you, Rachel. And then Maritza, last but not least, I'm going to ask you the same question. One, why does empowerment matter for your specific population? And then two, how, because I know you are a new grantee partner, so how your participation and partnership with AWF in this program is making a difference?
Okay. Well, For us, empower means that we can provide a space for our families and girls also to build a self-confidence and really allow them, the self-confidence, allow them to identify opportunities and not to be afraid to build their own future. That is empower for us, that the parents and the youth are creating their own futures and not to be afraid of that. We think that that's the foundation. One of the things that Los Niños does from early age, and this is what is really important when we think about prevention, when the Department of Education said that when we invest $1 in early childhood education, we save $8 in remedial programs. We are really making a huge difference when we see our kids that start at 3 years old and they have the opportunity to be immersed into the learning, and this go all the way to our youth and our parents as well. We are creating the foundation for them to feel more confidence, to express their emotions, and to, as I said before, to identify the opportunities that this environment is offering them. So in terms of, this is our first year with Atlanta Women Foundation funding, which we are very happy. And that allows us to create an intergenerational program and mentorship. We have a group of young girls, 5 to 8 years old, to be mentees of our youth that are from 14 all the way to 24. And then we have the mentors that mentor the little one, as at the same time have mentors that mentor them. So that is why they have different layers. So we are very fortunate to be able to count with the funding, because this is an aspect that we really wanted to embrace, and we have been focusing in mental health mainly. So they have different activities where they can amplify the voices, and they can understand and be able to express their own feelings. So this is one of the specific way we have been using the funding, and I'm pretty sure that at the end of this year, we will be having more information about the impact that this program has been taking. And another thing that is very important to us is that thanks to this funding, we are able to take the program to the south and more north. So we have 3 different locations with that program, which allow us to expand our services. So it has been great.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, each of you, for helping us understand why empowerment matters and how the partnership with AWF is making a difference. It's clearly making a very tangible impact, not only in terms of providing the funding, but providing the strategy. And it sounds like you guys also think a lot about how to partner with other organizations. So I think being in this AWF ecosystem must be such a great thing for you guys. Now, I didn't leave time for questions, because you guys had so much great information and your populations were so different that I wanted to make sure that we left time for you guys to really kind of go deep there. I will say we had one question come in. And so I'm just going to give this to you, Elizabeth, because we're going to wrap up here. But someone asked, and I think it's a very pertinent question, and obviously there are political issues that intersect with everything everybody said. Let's just be clear about that. Almost everything everybody said, there are hot button political issues. But one thing that was elevated in the questions was the current climate and debate around immigration and how that may affect not only your services, but maybe the level of anxiety of your girls, or as your organization thinks about sort of the coming year. So we're just curious, and again, we're out of time, so I won't ask everybody. I'll just throw this to Elizabeth, but we're curious how the current climate around immigration, no matter how you feel about the debate. So we'll, obviously all of these issues have multiple perspectives, but how that's impacting your work, or is it impacting your work?
Sure, I'll try to be brief. I mean, there's always a political aspect, as you say, to these conversations, right? And one of the good things about our students is they just still have a great amount of innocence where they don't think about things in political terms. They're thinking about their identities in their own terms, right? They're not coming up against, thankfully, because of the environment that they're in, at least they're not coming up in school feeling othered by their peers because they have the shared identity. And so where we come in the conversations we try to have with them, which is what they're really interested in having, is a conversation about identity in their own terms, especially nationality, I think, which is at the core of sort of immigration. Our students, and we have most of them this year, probably half of our population this year, are students from Afghanistan, and they'll come in wearing their flag around their neck. They'll, paint it on their hand as a tattoo, like they'll wear it in every way that they can. And that's because it's home, right? I'm an immigrant to this country, and I know that feeling of, you always have a deep love of home, and you still love this country. And I think there's this sense that identity has to be zero sum, that you have to be one thing or the other. And the truth is you can be this and that. And that's what we try to express with them, is that your identity is not defined by what people say you are or think you are. Your identity is defined by who you know that you are. And those are the conversations I think all of us try to have with young people, is you find your way and you get to define who you are and not be bothered too much by how people see you.
Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth. That's a great high note upon which to end. And so I see there's another question coming in, but I think we're out of time. So I thank you ladies for taking the time to share from your hearts, really. I can tell it's something that each of you are talking from a place of passion. And so we really appreciate the work that you're doing in the community. We appreciate you taking the time out of what I'm sure are very busy schedules today in order to help unpack this so that our listeners can really understand what's going on in our own city, things that we may not have a real sort of view of in our day-to-day lives, and to start to really understand how the money and time that we donate to AWF makes a huge impact. So thank you so much for taking the time. I'm going to turn it back over to Ali and to Shonda now, and I just want to wrap up and say thank you again.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Julie, Elizabeth, Maritza, and Rachel, for this informational, educational, and really inspiring discussion. It's great to hear directly from you on how our young people, our young girls in particular, how they're navigating this time, and how you all are making such a big difference. Your programs are vital to girls in our community. And as Elizabeth said, I love it too. You give our girls voices, choices, and opportunity, and we are honored to invest in your programs. I also wanted to share that this recording will be available at a later date, hopefully by the end of this week, that we'll send out to everyone who signed on, as well as those that couldn't sign on, and we'll have it on our YouTube channel for everyone to share. So with that, I'm going to officially say goodbye, but I do love this question by Rose. So for those of you that want to stick on, I think we can end with this question, and I put it out to anyone on the panel. But thank you so much for this beautiful conversation in addressing mental health, which again was a thread throughout this conversation. The topic of getting validation from adults, caregivers is incredibly important. What are steps that we can take to educate adults and caregivers about mental health stigma? So I don't know if you had any final words on that.
I think Rachel has some final words on that.
Yeah. Thanks, Julie.
Well, I'll just share, I guess, they're coming through me, but words from the young people that we work with is just listen. I think real tangibly, adults can start by responding with curiosity. Can you say more about how you feel? And just validate feelings. And then for those of us who just want to educate ourselves about what does it mean when young people say I'm stressed, or when young people are talking about their thoughts on mental health, they can start with the media that we're making. So at voxatl.org, there's teen content on a variety of subjects, including mental health. There's a mental health tab. And we can read and listen to videos and podcasts about what young people across our community are saying.
Yeah.
And there's also the Free Your Feels campaign. So as a Youth Voice partner to that campaign, it's a statewide initiative housed at Voices for Georgia's Children. And it's free resources for youth and for adults who care about them, supporting youth in speaking up, and for us to listen and provide access to support.
I will add to what Rachel said, be present. When you are talking to your youth, be present, not to just to have your face there, but your mind in another space. And this is something difficult to do, but with practice, and it's very simple, doesn't cost anything except your determination to listen and be present when somebody else is talking to you, especially young people.
Agree. One of the things we say at our school is that all behavior is communication. And I think we're all as adults programmed to want to react or punish if we have power over a child, or have some kind of, reaction to a child or what we call acting out. But if we remember that they're trying to communicate with us and maybe they just don't have the language or feel safe enough, and so they do it in a way that looks like acting out, if we remember that, then we can be humble to do the things that Marissa and Rachel said. So I'll leave you with that.
That's so true, Elizabeth. And so back to AWF support, like investing in those healing-centered practices and knowing that we are providing those spaces for young people to be able to be in that trauma-informed kind of learning or community environment. So thank you for investing in our abilities to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for all you do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.